Today we have Dr. Shabnam Rangwala. She's the CEO and trustee of Project Noor, an occupational therapist with over 30 years of clinical experience. She works with children with special needs and aims to establish state partnership for more impact. Dr. Shabnam is also a recipient of the Bond UK Award 2020 for her work in training the UK-based charity MAITS. Welcome, Dr. Shabnam Rangwala.
Thank you, Santosh. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure's all mine. So just to get the conversation started, it will be great to understand a bit about Project Noor and your work that you do.
So Project Noor is quite an old charity. I came in very recently. I got inducted as a trustee. And it's since these last 10 years that, activities for Project Noor have increased. So the vision of Project Noor is to provide equal access to health and education for all. And like you just said in my background, I'm an occupational therapist. So I work with children with disabilities. And so we got in the health element as related to children with special needs. And the main work of Project Noor is to fill the gap. So in the terms of disability sector, Project Noor works with organizations based in lower and middle income settings, where we try to develop or fill the human resource gap that exists for these organizations. We fill this gap either through training of that organization, or also we are providing direct help through teleservices. Currently, that's what, and then there's an educational scholarship which we provide to families in the lower income strata. And main aim of Project Noor is not to replicate what is already being done. There are many organizations working in the disability sector, but Project Noor doesn't aim to create a new service, but to enhance the quality of services that are already existing at the field level.
Right. Right. And what led you to start this journey?
So again, I come back to my clinical training. That's as an occupational therapist. We are all or training. When I joined this practice, it is that you work with people who are having some sort of a disability. So it was a natural kind of progression that happened. Of course, in the initial years, I did a lot of clinical practice where you work directly, you have a doctor-patient relationship. But then over a period of time, I kind of reduced my clinical work because I learned that the need is greater to provide my clinical skills in settings where they don't have that. And so I think there was like a kind of gradual progression as I grew in my career to move towards into the social sector and so as an occupational therapist, you come with that frame of mind of helping and supporting people become more functional. That's what an occupational therapist does. So,
right.
It was quite a path that it just happened. Yeah, yes. It happened.
And you are doing work in the rural part of the country where the access is limited, and you're trying to strengthen the way they work with your team's skill set. What yes. is and what's that moment that made you really happy? Have you got that sense working in these regions in these regions?
Yeah, so some bit of it, yeah. Not some, quite a bit. I've been born in Mumbai, lived in Mumbai all my life, but we never foray into those areas of Mumbai which are not elitist, so as to say. So when I got an opportunity, maybe in 1999, through my mentor, Dr. Mithu Alur, who invited me to join a UNICEF project as an occupational therapist to provide my services to children in Dharavi, where we would be kind of providing cost-effective and innovative solutions to children in those settings. For a moment, I was completely, I didn't respond to her. And, she said, "Oh, Shabnam, don't you think are you not happy that I'm giving you such an opportunity?" So of course I was happy, but like, I was not sure whether going into Dharavi, what is it like Dharavi is, what happens in a slum. You've heard so many misconceptions. You're not really sure. But yeah, I think that was a moment that when I got drawn into that project, and then when I worked with people from these lower income groups, and I learned about the resource strength that they all have, I think, yeah, that's what gradually has taken me in that direction. So yeah, I think that project was an eye-opener for me, and I learned a lot through it.
So just like your mentor got you into this, she managed to identify the right talent, attract the right talent. How do you do that for your organization currently?
So yeah, like Project Noor is basically a collaboration. So we do a lot of, I do a lot of work with other people already into this sector. And I think then automatically you draw people with that similar kind of mindset. So you don't have to do too much of mentoring or too much of upskilling. But what I feel that, you can do is that once you draw people in of the same mindset, give them an opportunity to also figure out their ways in which, so if there is this need, then what do you think you can provide here? So that's what I normally do. And then they provide, and then we match the skill sets, and then we provide what we have to give to our beneficiaries. So for example, in the teletherapy project, I have 10 different therapists who do support the project. And then they are coming up with their own solutions. And then if they meet with the Project Noor needs, how we can give it to our clients. So really, I think a leader is basically gives wings and then allows the person to expand and fly. And yeah.
Right. So you draw them with your purpose and then give them space to build,
Yes.
build on that. I think that is
Yes, I
what.
think that's what. So you keep on guiding and then holding back, looking at what happens, and then you again probably step in a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
So and since you actually started your journey with a not necessarily in the social sector, but you started your journey as an occupational therapist very early. So who inspired you like very, very early in your life? How was that journey for you?
Earlier, as like I said, as an occupational therapist, I did some work in a hospital setting, in a clinical setting. But I think the universe just kind of shows you the direction, and then you move. And then, yes, I've worked with ADAPT, which is formerly the Spastic Society of India under Dr. Meetu Alur, for a large number of years. It's over 25 years. And yeah, she's the one who probably has kind of inspired me, shown me that these things are possible to be done in this setting. And all my colleagues, and of course the families. I would not forget the families, because children with disabilities, they come by with a dual disadvantage. There is poverty and disability is quite interlinked. So they do have a double disadvantage per se with other children. And it inspires me how those parents have the grit and determination every day to continue this journey. And I keep on learning from them. So, yeah.
And of course, COVID has not made it any simpler for any one of them, and for even organizations who are trying to render their services. So how have you maintained the outreach in these times, currently?
So COVID, I think, has had its challenges, of course, as well as it has things which has made all of us learn. So I think in the first 1 month, I think none of us knew exactly where we were going or what was going to happen. And everybody just tried to fill in the gaps. And yeah, I think Project Noor did we did the ration drives, and we did supporting the migrants. So we work in an area called Dahnu Taluka, which is in the Palghar district. So there we were supporting a lot of migrant workers. But then over time, I think everybody has, by 1 month, 2 months, all of us started thinking that this is not going anywhere, and we will all need to probably figure out a way of working. So we started, that COVID has given us a good opportunity to collaborate, to network at a cost-effective manner. So I think we should look at it from that point of view also. For us as professionals who are constantly, work, it gave us a time to sit back and even think that how do we want to go ahead. In the disability sector, parent empowerment is really, really crucial. So this gave us an opportunity that as a professional, let me step back and just provide the support to the parent. It was difficult. Parents are still finding it difficult. But in the long run, you see, eventually it's the parent who's, I'm as an OT or as a PT or as an SLP, I'm going to be there for 1 hour in a week or 1 hour every day if you have the funds. But if the parent learns some basic skills, they can carry it on for, and it can definitely be a long-term impact on the quality of life of that person with the disability. So yeah, I look at every challenge as a positive. So COVID did teach us how to empower parents.
Right. So did it also help you understand, or maybe let me ask another question. So in terms of the leadership values, that basically come out during tough times, what have you seen as a core leadership value that has helped you and your team to pull this through?
Yeah, so how do you work? When you're providing this, we are working in home settings. Right now, the child is not coming to us. We are going in the direct into the home of the family. We're actually seeing what is possible in their environment and then innovating using whatever is available. So I think even the team that works with me, each one would have like a story to tell. So for example, we had one child with multiple disability, and we thought he needed to have something like a swing, which of course, like they live in a shanty. So how does one put a swing? And the next session, when the therapist just had to communicate that to the family, and then the next session, we find that, he's innovated a sari and he's hung it in his house. And then the child, he's provided a backrest because the child is not able to sit independently. So they figured out that kind of a solution. Then even toileting, we're saying that the child should become independent in his or her daily living skills, because eventually that's what every parent looks for, that no child becomes independent. So how can the child go to the toilet? How the child can feed himself or herself? So those are the small things we are able to work with parents and provide solutions within their own home setting. So did I answer your question?
Yeah, I was just, you did. So you were just trying to also say about the core values that really help you kind of strengthen, or execute what you have managed to execute. So it's about collaboration that you were talking about. So yeah, you can.
Yeah, so that's what I mean, that collaboration between us, collaboration between the parent, and then figuring out the solution is, I think,
what the best way
what
is.
impacts for the long run. You can create a solution which is clinic based, and you will have that limited within that environment. But when you take it into the home setting, then it becomes a completely different, it's something that can be repeated very easily every day by the family.
Right. So I'm very curious to know, because I know very little about this space. How early should the child start working with an occupational therapist?
I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. So it can be as early as, I mean, like I have worked in the spectrum starting from neonates. That's when a child is born with some challenges, and you track that child through the years, till 2 years, till they achieve their proper development per se, normal development in all areas. So you can begin as early as an infant. But unfortunately, considering the way our health system goes, and especially in the rural areas, the children, because of the taboos that are associated with disability, the identification does happen quite late. And even if the identification, if it does happen, there are no services available to that child. So it really, I mean, like the families that I work currently with, there would be range. We're trying to pick them up as early as possible through simple tools, which can be administered by not a professional, by any semi-professional, and then they can be got for further support.
Right. And you spoke about innovation. So specifically to the space that you are tackling, since you started this journey there about 30 years ago, how have you seen innovation impact children with special needs over the period? Yeah.
Really, I mean, there hasn't been much. I mean, especially in lower and middle income countries, there's been a lot of high-tech innovations that have emerged for the disability sector, but we are still struggling with low-tech and low-cost innovations. I mean, that's really what I want to work for, and I want to kind of create at least something we can say, if this is not available, then try and do this. So for example, like a child would not be able to eat his food if he had a normal spoon. So you need to adapt that spoon. You need to adapt that plate in which the child may probably not be able to eat rice with his hand ever. So those adaptations now, as a therapist, I need to create for every child. But yes, it is possible to do it it requires a dedicated effort, which still hasn't been done, but hopefully soon we will get there. COVID has given us an opportunity for all of us to think about that. And,
right.
So see that, I mean, life skills is like, as an occupational therapist, we look at life skills from what we call self-care, which is eating, dressing, toileting, and then later on is going to school, going to play, going to work, etc. So these are all these life skills. And each person with a disability has a different need in each of these areas. So yes, I mean, high tech is available. Now we need to work towards low cost, low tech solutions.
Right.
Having said that, in terms of talking, most of them would have challenges. So I think we are coming out with some app-based things which would help people with communication challenges communicate easily with. So yeah, things are moving. And
okay, that's really good to know. Actually, that there is work that is already happening in this space. We often speak about mental health within our environment, and that has been of concern for the people who are working. But what has the situation been for these parents who have to cope with financial impact, having a child at home who desperately needs to go out but can't go out? How have you seen that unfolding?
So, I mean, per se, I haven't really directly done any mental health support, as you will label it as mental health support. But obviously, when a family is coming to you and gradually, because a therapist sees them every week, the bond and the communication becomes more. Then you, at that point of time, you need to understand if that family is undergoing any stressful situation, and then try and of course connect with somebody, or try in at your own capacity to kind of find and support them. So most of them are looking to us for medical support. If the child is having some health issue, they look to us for supporting so that the child's health is better. So then we try and connect them with the required health professional to see if their child's health condition can be improved or bettered.
Right, right. So now, given your experience working in Dahanu, you also done some work in Jharkhand right now.
Yes, so our teletherapy project is in Jharkhand. Yes.
How could you tell us a bit more about that? How is that worked out?
So it's basically most of the organizations who are working with children with disabilities, everybody of course moved into the online model. So what Project Noor wanted to do is not directly provide to the beneficiary or to the children's families, as most of the organizations would. We wanted to collaborate with the community-based organizations and enhance their skills, so that even when we move out, their capacity to manage children with special needs in their area would be enhanced. So we have and this is really because we are not going to have an therapist, so we are not going to have, even 20 years down the line, we're not going to be able to fill this human resource gap. So I really think that this, through telehealth, we may be able to and at least make some difference in the quality of life, because we can't keep waiting, when an occupational therapist will come, when a physiotherapist will come, at that point of time this child will get his intervention, or that this child has to travel some 100 kilometers to reach the civil hospital and then he will get his services. So I think this is
yeah, absolutely. So there is this entire skill set that you are complementing with whatever is available on ground to ensure that those people, the needy, the beneficiaries, or the children, they get access.
That's right.
Yeah. So
and
this is really
of course,
great,
through this project, I'm also looking at partnering with the state. So if the state does, agree, because right now the state says that handling of children with disabilities can only be done by qualified and so-called professional people. But then the state needs to understand that the state itself doesn't have that many people. So how are they going to fill the gap? So maybe that the professional is there, but she or he is there in the distance mode and observing what's happening. So we have a program of the state called the Rashtriya Bal Swasthya Karyakram, which is an excellent on paper. It's a brilliant program. And I'm looking that they will upscale it and support it in the long run.
So yeah, I mean, and you are obviously fighting this with the like-minded people around you. How is it that others can also join this, and what do you have to say for to anyone who's watching this? How can they come forward and help?
So Project Noor is a completely collaborative, and we are networking with people. So people who join us, there are in the voluntary sector, there are many therapists who have, the kind of work that we are doing, they would like to volunteer their time. So yeah, there is volunteering that can be done. Then we need a lot of support in terms of support to be given directly to the beneficiaries. So of course they can try and support those elements in terms of say aids that have to be given. So each child with a disability needs a special, if they can't sit, They can't be lying down the whole day. So we need to provide them a seating system. We need to provide, like I said, in every area. Then they need medicines. So yeah, that's, I mean, you know, it is through volunteering. Then we need support for people, letting people know about our project. So we need help in social media. We need help in our website management, and it can go on in data. I'm sure that we are doing it. A lot of data is being collected through Datagram. And now we'll have to, as the project ends, I'm hoping to meet in November, then there'll be so much data that will have to be analyzed to show. I mean, I can say that all the children are making progress, but I need to support it with data for somebody to believe me. And
right.
so, yeah, I mean, in all these sectors, we look for support. And
so we will, when we post this, we'll obviously put out the coordinates where people can reach out, so that
sure.
you know, they can connect with you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful interview and or conversation. Let me rephrase it. Obviously, a conversation, and more power to you and your work that you're doing.
Thanks, Santosh. Thanks for the time, and thanks for the support of Datagram all through this project.
Thank you so much.